Hello, everybody. I wanted to launch this meeting to present you Cédric Fettouche, which I was introduced to by Imke, who is a friend of ours and the communication or international relation director of the Sustainable Design School in Nizza. And she knows Cedric from another background of her old job in Catch School. And she found it interesting to link us because he is working on humanitarian design projects. And the idea of this evening interview was to have a quick introduction by Cedric about himself, who he is and what he's doing and what he's leading to, because he has a very great objective, I found. And so I will just leave you the place to present yourself. And you're with Giulio Vinaccia and Philippe Casens. We are doing this in the context of Intervallo 2, where we want to promote actions that are taken by designers right now, and not only right now. And Patrizia is also coming right now. She's joining the troupe. So I will leave you the place. Bonsoir, Patrizia, and I let I let Cedric make his tiny presentation.
So, hi everyone. I'm quite happy to be here and to be able to share this experience. So my name is Cédric Fettouche. I'm a designer and also the founder of this NGO, Humanitarian Designers. To give a bit of insight, so I graduated as a multidisciplinary designer at Catch Design School in France. So I've learned there to do graphic, space, and product design. And then I specialized in strategic design with IED, the Italian school. It was based in Madrid. And so during this master, I realized that design agencies were not really committed to work on environment and social projects. They were always telling me like, we don't have the time or we don't have the money for that. The client is not asking for it. So in the end, I decided instead of doing my internship to go to Lesvos Island in Greece and to go and work on the humanitarian setting over there. So I joined the first NGO called Lighthouse Relief. So I'm just going to show you some pictures with the logo, and then probably we will, maybe hopefully it will tease you to bring some questions about it, but I'm not going to explain all the NGOs. This first one is interesting though, because I guess it's also why I continued on that journey to work on the humanitarian setting. So this NGO is doing search and rescue. It's a search and rescue NGO, and they are doing mainly spotting of the boats crossing from Turkey to Greece. And they help the people on the landing. And they also have some environmental activities, which were beach cleaning and upcycling of materials such as life jackets and rubber boats. So when I arrived there, I arrived as a volunteer, and I was like really curious to see how I could apply design on such a context. And in a few weeks only, I spotted some challenges that the NGO could easily solve with my skills in design. So I talked with the coordinator and he agreed on those changes, and so I worked on it. And so I created a bunch of tools and information related tools, such as maps and handbook training and different standard operating procedures to improve the efficiency and to help the new volunteers to learn faster how to do their work. So this work, which was really simple in the end to implement, but nobody before had the skill to implement them, got adopted by all the search and rescue NGOs on the island, which were about 4 search and rescue NGOs and about 400 volunteers per year. So of course I was super happy to be able to create this kind of work and to have this immediate answer, like positive feedback on the work I was doing. And so I continued and I joined another NGO. First, I moved from Scalas Caminias, which was a small island, a small village, and I moved to the bigger town of Mytilene next to the infamous Moria camp. So here we can see this is Moria camp on the left. It's about 0.12 kilometers squared and it had 17,000 people. And on the right is Moria village, which is about the same size, but 1,000 people. And you can see here Mandala, which was one of the projects I worked on. I will talk about it after. So I went to this town and I worked with Office of Displaced Designers on a small pilot program as a mentor. I also joined One Happy Family, which was a community center. There I also implemented information-related work, graphic design, and I also tried to implement more of strategic thinking on social media, fundraising, and communication strategy. So this is the community center. They have about 20 volunteers. They have about 40 helpers, which are volunteers from the camp, and about 600 visitors per day. And so all those NGOs are actually grassroots NGOs. So that's, I think, a really important point. It's citizen-led initiatives, let's call it. So those grassroots NGOs are much more flexible to change, to innovation, and mostly social innovation in a way that they want to empower the people they want to work with and not work for, as we can find on the more traditional humanitarian settings. So I joined then Campfire Innovation. Basically, my strategic thinking, and at that time I just graduated from the Master in Strategic Design. And so I was more interested in understanding the systemic context, the global picture of this island and the actors who were working on the island. So Campfire Innovation was exactly what I was looking for. And the idea was to do interviews and to meet all the grassroots NGOs on the island to understand their needs, their challenges, but also their assets. And then the idea was to kind of match NGOs between each other, because on the island there are about 100 NGOs and they don't all know about each other. So the idea, yeah, exactly, was to connect them. And for example, Lighthouse we lived before was having troubles about maritime laws, and so I knew an NGO doing legal activities. So it was just a matter of connecting them to reply to challenges. So then I joined. So then I also created this map, which was the second big project I created on the island. This was at the end of my work with Campfire Innovation, and it is a mapping of all the NGOs and what they do on the island. So like I said, it was about 100 NGOs. This project had about 6,600 views within a week and 600 downloads within a week as well. So it has a really big impact, and it really improved the coordination and the collaboration among the grassroots NGOs. And actually it helped me then in the future to better create partnerships with other initiatives. So after Campfire Innovation, I joined Refugee for Refugees. And this was the first project where I was really like the project manager. I was in charge of creating the project, and I was in charge of coordinating teams of volunteers. So this one, that's really when I became a humanitarian worker with the added value of being a designer. So during the day, I was doing the project. I was trying to create this place, and during the night, let's say, I was designer trying to solve some other challenges. So this one, that's Mandala, the one I showed you on the map before. So it was only a few meters away from the camp, and it was 4,000 meters square olive grove. So with a lot of challenges, there was no water, no electricity, no toilets, a few meters away from the camp. So a lot of security issue as well. And the idea was to create a child-friendly space. We had activities with child, but it was on the camp or on the street, which was not safe because there were so many children coming to the activities. On the island, you have to know, is about 40% of children. So in the end, we decided to rent this place a few meters away and to open it as a safe place. I could really implement my vision as a designer. I could really work as a designer. I ran a lot of research to understand how the field works and how the users, the people, what they wanted to have. So the main vision of this project was to collaborate, to co-create, and sustainability. How to implement sustainability activities on this project. So this was, I think, a really interesting project where we all worked together as the volunteers, but we had like participatory workshops with volunteers, with residents from the camp, with children, with women, with locals to understand their needs and how we could all work together. So yeah, this is the research I was working on. And so after this project, once it was running, the one before, we had about 120 visitors per day and we were open 7 days a week. So once this project was launched, it was understood that I was going to leave once the project will be running. And so when I left, I got contacted by Oxfam on the island because they knew about the first service mapping I worked on and they wanted to create a new one, but for the residents of Moria camp. So I agreed to work with them to the only condition that we were going to run participatory creative workshops with the residents from the camp to be sure to understand their needs, to create a relevant service mapping that replies to their need, but also to avoid cultural biases or to avoid like misunderstanding between information because we don't have same cultures and we understand information differently. So we ran several workshops and at the end I created this A0 poster which had to be printed and mapped around the camp inside and outside. But the camp burnt out in September last year. So in the end, they did not have time to print it out. So yeah, the context on Lesvos evolved a lot since then. So I came back home in France. I worked with, this was a hackathon. And so we created as a group Passaran, which is a small project. I also created the Little Prince, which was one layout for 5 languages. So small projects that are still related, but yeah, I don't need to get more into details. And then in France, in March 2020, I joined the NGO CI and the rescue ship Alain Kurdi. And I was a field media coordinator. So I was in charge of taking pictures, video, interviews, all the communication that was happening on board of the ship. And so I was kind of the eyes and the ears of the NGO and the press office on shore. So, I mean, this one was a really empowering experience and unique experience. There I could also talk a lot about it. But the idea of this ship, if you don't know about it, is in Central Mediterranean. And so we are rescuing the boats which are leaving from Libya. So this was in March, just before the pandemic, and I came back home in May, the end of the first confinement. So since then, I created Humanitarian Designers in January, so a few weeks ago. And so this is an idea I had in mind since a lot of times already, but the idea is that on Lesbos, I have met only 3 designers in 3 years. And I've met like thousands of volunteers, so just 3 designers. So I was really questioning my own community of designers on, we are all promoting to be people-centered and to understand their needs and to be empathetic, but then in the end, I have met more international relations, politicians, architects, and a lot of professions, but no designers on the island. So the idea of this NGO is to go both ways and to advocate to NGOs and promote the value of design and what designers can bring. And also on the other side, to communicate to designers and to talk to them about what are the working opportunities on the humanitarian sectors. So those are the two main vision, and then it has to be created.
Perfect. Thank you very much. When I talked to him last week, or it was 2 weeks ago, maybe, I was thinking directly we should talk with him, all the four of us, because we have different experiences, and I think what he's doing, and then when you hear what his experience, it's very interesting also to know that he did all this in 4 years. Is it like this? You were like, it was like 4
Yes.
years that you were collecting all these experiences, and this is leading you to a very specific goal, so to communicate much more about where a designer can intervene, because there's always the different categories that you can do, that you can be active on, etc. But so many people, as you said, are so centered on something else that they don't even know about it, maybe, or they don't know how to connect to it. And this is the both ways, like the way the NGO who does not know what a designer can do, and the designer who does not know that he can do, maybe.
Yeah, most of the time is like the design schools, they have partnerships with companies. So when you finish your school, then you have an internship, and generally it's on a big company. And as soon as you start working on that path, then it's harder to do a step back and to be like, okay, let's try something else. So it's also one of the goals of the NGO is to communicate to design schools and to students.
And as we are like, all the four of us are all teaching in design schools, I would like to pass on, like if the others have some questions for you or want to know more or comments. So I see Patrizia is...
I have a few questions, if I can start for Cedric. I find this idea of humanitarian design very, very interesting. I mean, it can be an evolution of what we call social design, or maybe a branch of what social design is, what it can do. And I see this new designer that could be defined in the future, humanitarian design, like you showed to us, a mix of a designer with experience, the background of in design, but also with a very deep involvement in the activism. So with a very precise political and social idea. So it's a very, very strong, this role. And of course, as Imke said, it must be defined what this humanitarian designer can do, and how and in how much can be useful his job, his work, his projects with the NGO, connecting the NGO and the politician. I mean, everything must be created. I think you just started a new project, a new way. And this is very interesting. My question is, your experience show that for the moment, very interesting, all of them, but they are like one-shot project, okay, that you have done. They went from A to B. And then what remains of these projects? Do you think there are something that can become some best practice, something that you can replay or teach how to replay in other situations, or not? Or every experience is unique and special?
it's a really systemic. I mean, there are so many things to say on so many different directions. Of course, I mean, I feel like humanitarian design, the word itself is quite old. And we have seen a lot of case studies, but most of the time it's about product design and products that were created. And we have this idea of humanitarian design as being a product oriented, but it can bring also a lot of different things. And I think for me, the most important is the collaboration and being able to do participatory workshop with people and to implement a bit like what I say is that the humanitarian sector is like 10 years late following the business industry. And so the business industry has learned about design through the design thinking and the brainstorming session and the post-it. And basically that was the collaboration inside the company. And so the humanitarian sector is kind of following now. It's like there are a lot of topics about white saviorism and about we need to understand, I mean, we cannot be the white people going to save the poor people. And so there is a lot of conversation on bridging the gap and having more communication and more collaboration. So, like you say, I mean, there is everything to be done, and the idea of creating humanitarian designers is also to have more people working on that field and to create case studies, and then to it's almost like a PhD research that could be done there, and yeah, it's going in so many directions at the same time. I mean, right now, at the moment, because there is no designers in the humanitarian sector, the idea for me personally is to find work in the humanitarian sector, but then to understand what is available. So that's also why, for example, personally, as a professional, I'm going as a communication specialist because they have a lot of needs on communication and because my design skills is an added value. So at the moment, it's more about bridging the gap and then understanding what can be done as a designer within those international NGOs, and then creating a framework on what designers can bring with their skills. And so this is long-term thinking to see how it can be created.
Yeah. Cedric, how long have you been, for example, in Lesbos? You spent 3 years there, or you just come and go? How was the timing of this work?
3 years I stayed there. I mean,
you stayed 3 years
and a half. Sorry?
So you stayed 3 years in the island?
Yeah.
Have you been? Okay. Because there is also a lot of tendency of weekend volunteers.
Yeah,
People
that
want
is
to
like
make
volunteerism.
Yeah, they want to have they clean their soul and come and do something and after leave it. But what is I think is very important is what you mean. And normally, when I start doing projects in the university or workshops, I always say we will do this, and all the students are very, very attracted by the concept to work in humanitarian, let's say, in a wide range of social activities. But unfortunately, I don't know what is your experience, but designers are a little bit allergic about the reality. So when I say, yes, let's go, I never forget once I did a project in a presentation in the Polytechnic of Milano. And when I finished the presentation, I have like 100 students, everybody, all with a single business card, say, I want to go with you, I want to go to you. At the end, they said, but we want just to go to Brazil. We don't want to go to Syria, or we don't want to go to Africa. You have any place in Brazil for that for us? It was, and my answer was, I'm not a travel agency. So you have any, let's say, strategy to break this wall? For example, in the how approach, because I think the most important thing you have mentioned, in my point of view, is how we need to attract the NGOs to take care and to communicate with the design schools. And this is not happening at all. And they are like two different worlds, and the designers are taking care about make a new furniture or whatever, or their dreams is work for make a new iPhone, but clearly not to go to Lesvos only if they can go to bring holidays. That looks nice. So what is your strategy? How has been your experience to break this wall between design studies and reality, let's say?
So I have this maybe provoking thoughts of designers are actually not empathetic. We like to say that we are, but we are not. And we just see the people as users, but not as human beings. And there is much more to understand. I mean, being empathetic is being able to understand people as human beings and not as users. So one of the strategy I have at the moment is to push students, design students to work, to volunteer with local associations. Or any students, I mean, not only design students, but the idea is that as soon as you start to volunteer with a community that shares the same value than you, then you start to understand what they can bring to you. I mean, when you start to volunteer, then you can never step back. I mean, you really learn what's happening, you build your arguments, you share your values with a community of people. And generally, it's once you do it, then it's really hard to just keep away from there. So I would generally say to students, just go and volunteer to your town. There are a lot of associations, and it's generally a simple and easy way to break down this barrier.
Yes,
I mean,
but with the students, but what is the strategy with the university? Because the problem is there is a filter always, is the school filter. Say, hey, come on, Mr. Fettouche, we don't want to have this kind of project. We want to be involucrated with other kind of luxury goods or whatever. So I tell you that because this is one of my biggest frustration. Since 20 years, I'm trying to do that in all the schools I was. And always I remain like an exotic animal. You know, I am the exotic animal of the school who is doing this kind of adventure and humanitarian works. But I never I was never able to make this convert this in a philosophy, let's say. No, the philosophy of the school design school is still one copy the other, but it's still, as you say, more related with the private business and industries and watching the people like users and not like people, like real humans. So I think we must. I don't know. I think your NGO can maybe break this wall of ice.
No, it would be interesting to understand from Cedric which are the next step that he is
Exactly.
There is quite a challenge then. Yeah, like you say, I mean, I agree that we see much more students from international relations, and generally what happens is like they are still students, but they already are proactive and do volunteering during their studies. And so when they arrive on their work, when they apply for their first job, they already have 2 years of experience in volunteering on humanitarian context. So they are aware of the challenges that they are going to face as professionals. They must show experience. And so they are proactive during their studies to meet the requirements to get a job. And I think it's something important as a designer is to be proactive from the beginning, from schools. I mean, there is always this transition between high schools and schools, design schools, where you must understand that the school is not here for you, but you must be proactive, and it's always takes some time for people to understand that they must go to the administration, and they should not wait the administration to come to them if they want to do Erasmus or if they want to do those amazing opportunities. And so once they understand that, they should become proactive, and they should also become proactive as a citizen, which means they should volunteer locally. They should start to understand, to be really empathetic with people, to start to work with a community that shares the same value. And only then they will arrive graduated with 2 years of experience in a volunteering NGO association. And then they will be able to be considered as professional designers who are socially active, or either social or activist. I think there are there are many different paths available. And so I think proactivity is the most important.
About design. But my frustration on this kind of project, I just tell you, I was my first work in design, my degree work was in the 80s, working in Colombia in a cooperative of milk and cow production. And we did a fantastic work, but at the end we didn't find anyone who produced the item that we designed. So I get frustrated and say, no, now I need to create something that is possible to be realized, because this is another problem. There is many, for example, now with the COVID-19, all the universities have thousands of projects of masks or whatever do, but they are absolutely unuseful and not realized. So what I'm concerned, Patrizia and Cedric, is about we are losing energy doing things that doesn't work, doesn't need, I really very angry sometimes, because I see that the university, they lose opportunities, and they don't use this fantastic young brain to do something real, so something works. Not all are concept, and when you say, let's go in the reality, no, we would like to do only concept. So this is, I just tell you about my frustration on the work.
There is a Humanitarian Design Bureau. Maybe you know about Fabrice Choumoff in France. And I think he has a similar experience. He had a project like this that could improve. It was a project about water. I don't remember, a wash program. And nobody wanted to buy it as well. And he had also some frustration about that.
But this is the old, this is the old way. This is the way to make design, humanitarian design in the 80s. And we start doing, but we are very bad here. And we try to clean, to do, but I think my point of view, and this is my line of work, but what is beautiful is that there is many lines of work. Is okay, these guys will arrive to the island and maybe they will stay in the island. After a few years, they became citizen of the island, maybe, I don't know. So what kind of business we can create for these guys? What kind of activity we can create for these guys? To cross the line, I'm not interested, this is not my line of work. I'm not interested in the humanitarian, the first aid. I don't know how to do it. But what I think what is nobody is concentrating is the day after. Everybody wants to see the boats or the rescue. That is absolutely 100% agree that we need it. But for example, what is also important in my point of view, and this is something that I really trust, is work in the day after. Okay, these guys are right. You save the guys in the sea, and this is a fantastic point. But after, these guys are in Italy, they don't have any jobs. So what kind of job, what kind of activity we can create to give them an economy and a future on the place where they are? So I think there is many point of views on the humanitarian design. There is not only the first aid that is very important, clearly, but also the follow-up of the situation, that what's happened after 5 years. These guys are in Italy since 5 years, they speak Italian, but they have no jobs. So what And from that, for example, in Italy, there are fantastic experience examples of small cooperatives who have taken these refugees and they integrate with the local community and create projects like the project of Mimo Luciano. What is the name of the town?
Yeah. It's a city
It's
where
in Calabria. It's in Calabria where
yeah.
they start doing things. Clearly, at the end of the story, the poor mayor was put in the jail because the Salvini didn't like him, and after he's gone back, he's out. But let's say this is I will love also to create this network in between the first aid and the second, third, fourth situation, no? Because there is activities and there is NGOs working on the, let's say, the day after, but they are not integrated with the NGOs who are working in the first aid, let's say, the first saving the life. But they maybe save the life, and after they leave them in the middle of nowhere, you know. We, no, I don't know. I'm just thinking. I'm not doing any. I just create like in my brain something to integrate. I don't know what do.
So you have like on the humanitarian sector, I mean, you have this response of humanitarian-made disaster or human-made disaster or natural-made disaster. And normally before you have the preparing, and after you have the, like you say, to implement long-term strategies, let's say. Yeah. And in Greece, actually, most of the grassroots NGOs are more thinking about that. So the community center, for example, I worked for was mainly managed by the residents from the camp. So it was a place not only to go as a community center, but also to work and to keep up with your professional skills. And so a lot of projects on Lesbos are actually about shifting this humanitarian thinking. So for example, there is a shop. Normally on the humanitarian traditional way, you will have people from the camp coming to you, you will distribute them clothes, and then they will go back home and that's it. But the way it's built on Lesbos is that we created a shop where people can go and choose their clothes. So we give them back some dignity and they can have a normal life in the way they are experiencing the service. Of course, the clothes are free, but it's just about the experience. So I think on Lesbos, they are quite...
And what is the situation now, in Lesbos?
So the camp, Moria camp, burnt in September, I think. It was in September.
Yeah.
And so people were on the street. It was about 15,000 people. And asking for the people to be moved away from the island. So it's always this hotspot idea where people are stuck on the island before their administrative case is handled by the government. So now the Greek government has created a new camp where conditions are probably worse than the Moria camp because it was an old military field, shooting range, military field. So a few days ago, there was some research that were made on the soil that were saying that the soil of the camp is actually contaminated with all the pollution of the old military camp. So the condition is not so good. I do not keep up with all the information, but generally Lesbos is not the Greek island that we can imagine in the summer. It's quite north of Greece. And so the winter is actually really cold, really windy. So I think it was snowing a few days ago as well. And they have no facilities on the camp. So it's a difficult moment. And it's also the idea of the One Happy Family, the community center. The first interview I had with Humanitarian Designers is with Fanny Opler. She is a board member of this project. And so I was asking her the question, are you a social project or a humanitarian project? Because they are a community center, and sometimes they have to do, basically the history of this place is like during the summer, they are able to run activities where they can empower the people. And then during the winter, when conditions are really bad, then they have to shift again to this humanitarian way of replying to all the needs and challenges.
So Cédric, because we have also to conclude at some point our exchange here, what would you say, how do you see the future of the designer? How would you define it, the future of the designer in your way?
All the designers.
It's you to define this. It's up to you. You can say all designers, or what would be your wish for the future?
I mean, I do feel that young designers are more involved because now climate change, and I mean there are a lot of I mean it's becoming normal to be not an activist, but at least like to go and protest and to try to create change. And for example, I've seen in France there is a union of student designers now, and they created their first meeting with a group of unions from different design schools around France. And so they are kind of organizing, and even if it's organizing to improve the working condition at school, then it's still an experience that can be used in the future for the designers. So I think it's becoming, yeah, again, proactive, but the idea is like, yeah, hopefully that they will become more aware about how they can bring change on not only on as a designer, but also on society and political and other fields. Like we are always better as designer, we are always better when we go outside of our zone and our community.
Out of the comfort zone. Thank you very
Yeah, I
much.
didn't want to bring that keyword, but
yeah, I know, but
we are always better when we are not with designers, because
exactly.
then we can do a lot of things.
Yeah, because we have to challenge, and we have to show what we can do. That's the point. If you are just in between of this society, maybe you cannot even show it like this. Thank you very much, Cedric.